So topic today, as you all know, which is why you're here, is we're going to talk about going from a fragmented AdOps process to how we get to fully integrated. So a lot of what we'll discuss with our folks up here on the stage is how AI is being used today, the operational model behind it, and how agencies and brands are currently using AI and automation to drive scale across their business. Quick intros here. I'm Heather. I'm the VP of Growth at Fluency. I also am joined by my colleague and my boss, Eric Mayhew. He's our CPO and president, one of our founders. Then we also have my good friend Taren King. He is from SMB Media Labs at Intuit, Senior Staff Product Manager, and Thiel, Senior Director of Advertising and Revenue Operations at Cox Automotive. So we're going to have a great discussion, both from the agency perspective and the brand perspective of how we do this. And I think it's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. So traditionally, when we talk to folks who are thinking about taking this journey, we meet them in a place where they are extremely fragmented. And I think what's interesting about that is in advertising, we're on the forefront of technology, right? We are the creativity, the way we're delivering ads, the type of ads that we deliver. You know, we are on the bleeding edge of all things. But we have remained extremely archaic in the way we deliver. And we're on a mission here to bring that into the 21st century and say, we need to catch up with everything else that's going on, with automation, with AI, and how do we make people's lives better, and how do we really become a force multiplier for the best people on your staff. And that's the vein that we'll be going down today. A lot of folks, what we see is there may be some scripts, some automation, there may be some ways to make the manual work better across different teams, whether that's creative, whether that's the execution piece, whether that's just moving data from one place to the other. But what we don't see is a cohesive automated strategy connecting all of your systems, aggregating all your data so we can launch and manage ads at scale. What are the risks? The risk to the business when we continue to operate like this is, one, you're gonna burn out people, right? The job of copying and pasting is not a fun one. It's boring, it's not very rewarding, it's not strategic, and we want folks on our teams to feel like they're doing their best work, they're doing the strategic work, the things that make advertising more performant, not just managing and reacting to the things that are happening. It is really hard to grow. You have to be able to decouple headcount from account growth or campaign growth. And time and material waste, right? It's just a lot of time to do these things at scale. It could take days, weeks, months, depending on the size of these accounts or businesses that you're trying to launch within your agencies. And we have a pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but there's a way to mitigate all of this. And when we think about that journey of how do we go from clicks and copying and pasting to streamlined operations, first of all, it starts within your walls, whether you're a brand or you're an agency, and it's how do we aggregate the data, right? How do we take it from 10 systems or 15 systems into a single place where ads can be assembled, launched, and managed? And that today, for most of you, is somebody is taking data from somewhere and they're putting it somewhere else. That inherently creates risk in your business, right? We are imperfect people, we're imperfect humans, we make mistakes. So one is, how do we aggregate data into a single place without someone having to touch it? Once we are able to take that data from your four walls into a platform, then we can use automation and AI to be able to assemble, launch, manage. The thing that's important here is that doesn't mean a human does not get involved. Yeah. What we want the humans to do is to interact when needed. So instead of managing and reacting to what's happening out there, we want to be proactively surfacing up the opportunities or the risks to the advertising for someone who's better suited to make a decision. And that's the power of AI plus automation within the advertising operations field, right? Not eliminate people, but allow people to do the work that is most important for people to do and to allow them to do other things like make sure advertising's performant. On top of that is the other thing is, one, how do we make reporting insights easier? So using AI and agentic to be able to understand the insights of the business, get data fast, be able to answer questions to your customers fast or your internal stakeholders. And all of that together, one, makes your process faster, safer, more performant, better work conditions for your customers, and if you're an agency, better outcomes for your customers, right? Did I tee that up good?
Yeah, you actually did most of this section, so awesome work. Thank you so much. This ought to be easy to talk about the same kinds of things. So why don't I go a little bit different with the way I'll talk about it? I'll talk about the journey that brings us to where we are today. So there's a lot of things. I got my start as a developer, so I'm a software developer, but I got my start sitting next to the AdOps teams. So I was sitting with some extremely intelligent AdOps folks, and you listen for this one phrase. There's this one phrase that I didn't realize I was hearing it as much as I was, and there was an epiphany moment, but it's 4 words, and those 4 words are, why can't it just? So that phrase, if you listen for it within your own walls, you'll hear something that's predicated on one of 2 things, and probably both, a little bit of frustration and a lot of brilliance. Like those 2 things are going to be together with that one singular phrase. So why can't it just, and then whatever comes next, you should build. It's a really good idea. And it makes being a product person extremely easy and developing the right software. So that experience that I want to talk about, sitting with the AdOps pod, working with the team, helping them go through those processes, I would notice a trend. It was always, we were in an organization that did both websites and advertising, and in that ecosystem, it would be, Taren was one of the people that I was working with, but it'd be 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and there'd be my developer light on and the AdOps person's light on. And it was pretty consistent. Always working nights, always working weekends, challenges in there. And I remember that time that phrase really clicked in was sitting with someone, it's 8 o'clock at night, their light's on. I said, Seth, what's going on? Why are you still here? And he said, I just got a 500-line spreadsheet from my client with all the specials that they need running for the first of the month, which is Monday, and I'm going to be here all weekend. And the next thing he said was profound. He said, why can't it just use this spreadsheet to build out my campaigns? And that's like an earworm. That sits in your brain and just kind of percolates. And that's what we really founded Fluency on, was that concept of why can't it just use the data that we already have, get me to automation, help me build my content, help me build my campaigns, and make it simpler for me not to be repetitive and do that translation and enter the data into multiple systems. So that's what we founded Fluency on, focusing on business data that we already have and making sure that we can put together rule systems, automation and orchestration workflows that just take advantage of that data and take the tedium out of the workflow. So we'll start with, if you look at this workflow, it starts out with manual. They were doing thousands of clicks a day just to keep the lights on, just to maintain those campaigns. And when you get to an automated strategy, the tedium goes away. You're still involved. You're still looking for the one-off, the anomalies, but the tedium goes away, that heavy lift of just configuring systems. So automation brings you scale, and scale can be a challenge. Much like if you don't have scalability in your HR systems and you hire more people, you can be kind of flooded and overwhelmed. Same thing with your AdOps processes. If you are not ready for scale can be, it's a 5-letter word, but it could be a 4-letter word inside your organization. It could be really challenging. Well, a lot of the stuff that we've worked on is to build those automated workflows. Taren will talk a little bit about this, putting it into practice, talk about how those things have helped Intuit. And then as we go forward, there's always another, and I'm going to find this for the rest of my career, there's always another why can't it just? So the very next why can't it just is saying, hey, if I've already got all of these things running in the background, they're already doing all this work for me, they're maintaining my campaigns for me, they're adapting to data, the business data that's in place, why can't it just tell me what's going on with my accounts? Why can't I get those insights? And it was very difficult to do up until about 2022. And with the advent of the LLMs, we've gotten to this spot where interpretation of complex systems is a little easier. There's a piece of that, and if you've ever done this manually, you might copy a table out, put it into Claude or ChatGPT and ask it questions. That process can be facilitated by something called Retrieval-Augmented Generation. So if you've heard of that phrase, Retrieval-Augmented Generation is a super powerful tool that allows us to get to the point where we move from just being able to automate content to now being able to interpret the differences, those things, the anomalies, the problems that we might want to address, interpret those changes that have been made and what their intentions are. So we can actually do those things with retrieval-augmented generation. So if automation brings us scale and predictability and process, what we get with retrieval-augmented generation is understanding and comprehension from our data. Really important piece to go from. The next logical thing is if you know what the interpretation, if you know the understanding of my data, and you've been making the changes for us, why can't you help me tell my clients the story? You've got the story. How do we do that? And so there's a really neat thing, and Ann will talk a little bit about that as we go, so I won't take too much of the thunder there. But that whole concept is all around this automated reporting that has a narrator over top of it, which is really incredible to be able to tell a story that you can tell your clients. Because if we look at any of the reporting that's out there today, 40-page PDFs, lots of data dense, nobody knows what they are, nobody knows how to read them, nobody wants to read them. And simply we want to get to the point where it's a 3 to 5 minute video walking you through your data, telling you the value prop of your advertising. It's a very cool thing. So now we've moved from basically interpretation and understanding into storytelling. Finally, the place that we're at today, and I'm really excited about this spot, and this is AI agency. The next question is if you can tell the story, you know what my client is concerned with, if you know what the data is telling us, and you can automate all these settings, why can't you do some of those changes for me? And we are here. So there's a tool use and function calling, and if you build your software to be AI agentic friendly, which is what we've been on the mission for in the last few years, you can get it so that the outcomes of those LLMs will actually operate your software for you. Now we're cautious here. There's some challenges. Like we want to make sure, I know Ann will be really sensitive to OEM compliance and co-op eligibility rules and the governance rules. So we need supervision systems on top of those agents and make sure that we are compliant with what the advertising is supposed to be telling us. But those systems can be built today to actually pre-configure software, be ready for you, with a very cool and dynamic approach. So if we will go through that whole journey, and I'm going to turn it over to Taren in just a second, that journey goes from automation bringing you scale, eliminating the tedium, to retrieval-augmented generation, building you comprehension and understanding, followed up with agency, which just expands human capability. The simple fact of the matter is we have limited amounts of time. Like the time on keyboard is just challenging, and here's a spot where we can supercharge our hands. We can do some amazing things with it. So I actually am going to turn it over to Taren now to talk about some of the experiences you've had. Taren's actually turned it from concept and conversation and software into actual real-world practice. So,
thank you.
Taren.
Thank you, Eric. So Taren King. I've been at Intuit 2.5 years, but I've been in the ad tech space for about 15 years consistently, which is crazy to think about. I do have a little bit of a show throat, if you guys know what that is, from a loud happy hour, so rookie move if you're going to be presenting. Apologies in advance. So SMB Media Labs. SMB Media Labs exists for 2 reasons. The first one is that brands struggle to reach small business owners. Oftentimes a brand will just deprioritize that budget or go with the spray and pray route. So very challenging for brands. The other side of the coin, though, is that small business owners struggle, right? The first 2 years of a small business is very challenging, and they do not really have a way to tell others that they are small business owners. A lot of them don't tell people. And I myself am a solopreneur, right? I started an Amazon business as a COVID project, and throughout that process, which I did all myself, I don't recommend it, by the way. Throughout that process, I found that, man, it would be really great if I saw an ad for freight forwarding, Alibaba, these kinds of things, and I never saw it. No one knew I was doing this. I actually didn't really even tell like the extended family until like it was successful, right? And so it's twofold. It's to allow brands to connect with small business owners and then allow small business owners to succeed. And so part of the element of what we do is make sure that the offer is compelling. You don't want like 50 cents off a cheeseburger or something. You want something that's like really impactful to your business. So we started that 2 years ago, and with anything like this, right, one thing that brands will typically do is, especially on the media network side, they will reach out to partners like Fluency when they are already in the midst of it. They scaled, and all of a sudden they have all these inefficiencies. Now, contrary to that, my goal was to reach out and be proactive, knowing and working with Eric in the past. I already knew that Fluency software was really ideal in terms of the way it can take in data sources from anywhere and manipulate it and then leverage that to automate these key processes. So really from day one, my goal was to start off manual, right? You don't want to automate things before you really know what those challenges are, but think about it from the lens of, I know I am going to run into these challenges. Now, identifying the challenges is also an exercise in of itself, because as a leader of, let's say your business is just starting a media network, you know there are challenges, but you don't know what those challenges are. And you don't want to automate everything at once. You want to look at those low-hanging fruits. So identifying the low-hanging fruits is all about connecting with your team, understanding from the ops perspective, what are those big gaps? And we identified a few. So for example, creating the audience for us is a gap. And we're very custom in our approach, and that's by design of the product itself, but it's time consuming. Understanding how long it takes to actually launch a campaign, because we have two offerings. We have a managed service, and that's really end-to-end management, including the wrap-up report, all of these things, renewals, the gambit of that. And then we also have self-serve, where we actually send the data to others, they run it, and so we have these two binary options. But the managed service is the most challenging from an operational perspective. So we had a meeting, we identified those challenges, and then looked at them and said, hey, what is the lowest hanging fruit for us to automate? And we understood pretty early on that it was actually the launch process, the copy pasting of the world. I came from that space. I started in the trenches, and I was the one accidentally adding a zero. Sorry, Eric.
Well, you're also the one that said, why can't it just do this for me?
So that was an element as well.
Yeah.
So from that, we really started and said, like, how many times are we keying in data, and what are those potential points of failure, and what does that do to the launch process itself? And then we identified what are the actual starting points, and can those starting points be the runway to connect all of the dots downstream to those platforms? So we started off, Heather, next slide, please. We started off in a system where we are making the media plan, then we are manually making that an insertion order, then we have this intake form that we send to the client, then they gave us the data points, then we go blah, 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 you go into all the channels, and all of a sudden it's a 2-week process. There's chances of mistakes, the extra zero, not enough zeros, all of those things can apply. By understanding that Fluency can connect to really any data source, our data source in this case is our insertion order. We have what's called an order management system where we log the insertion orders. That becomes the point where the system can understand, hey, we have all the fields we need for all of these channels. So going from this, 6 points of failure, going to a single point where you get that information direct, then that actually feeds from our order management system into Fluency and then pushes into the channels. Now you have an end-to-end system, but it's not something you just set and forget. There's still QA. You always want a QA. I'm not saying like that QA goes away. I think once you feel very, very comfortable, the QA becomes a very quick task, right? So it's still minimizing the time overall at the end of the day. So the savings were substantial in terms of time. Time is money for a business like this, so you can service the clients that you have. But it's not the end state for us. Obviously, agentic AI, insert buzzword here. Agentic AI is really important in terms of the other pain points, right? I mentioned creating a custom audience. Agentic AI can help with that. Recommending a media plan. Now, optimizing is where maybe I'm old guy status, but I feel very much about human in the loop when it comes to optimizations, and very risky around like changing budgets. But making sure the human is always in the loop is very important as you explore those. But I would consider agentic AI as the next step up in the automation process, where this is a very clear connect the systems automation. Once you apply agentic, it's like that third step. I think there was actually a slide that we showed earlier that had those 3 steps, and now we're approaching what is that third step for us. But we're going to do it in the right way, making sure that we don't just go all crazy with it, but understand systematically which pieces will agentic cover for us and which pieces will remain as is, and then over time continue to have that step up the staircase until you get to that holy grail scenario where humans are still in the loop, but we're now focusing on all the other things like selling, hopping on calls with clients, and not being bogged down by all of those manual processes.
This is a neat slide. Oh, can we go back for a second, Heather? This is a neat slide to kind of anchor in. Even though it's a relatively simple slide to look at, one of the things that Taren and I have talked about over time is if you can draw a flow chart, you can automate it. And it's a really cool thing to see the thought process that went into how these things flow. and understanding that these are serial events.
Yeah.
The data that starts in the beginning is the data that built the next thing, and that builds the next thing. So knowing that we're not pulling in a myriad of other signals, and even if we were, as long as we could map it out, it's a great candidate for automation. So when Taren says that we can't do optimizations yet, once he tells me how he makes decisions, we'll draw a flow chart and we'll show it working.
Exactly. That's it.
Awesome. And I was hoping you could talk about some of the experience that you have with Cox Automotive. You have used so many of the features, and you're expanded out even beyond things that I'm aware of. So.
Yes, thanks for having me, number one. I lead our advertising and revenue operations teams across AutoTrader, Kelley Blue Book, and Dealer.com. Some of those teams are traditional traffickers. Some of them are media buyers. It's yield, it's forecast and delivery. The important thing to remember here, and I'm going to touch on it on the next slide, is that within my teams, we have publisher and agency tech stacks. So we've got 2 tech stacks, which makes it interesting and fun to try to solve for automation. And so what I would say is, since I joined the organization about 8 years ago, we have relentlessly automated wherever we can. And that's going to be across the publisher and the agency. And so we've done a lot of the work to automate specific processes, just like you both talked about earlier, within the workflow. Can you go back to the other slide? Sorry. We are, when you specifically talk about the Dealer.com side of the house, we are trying to manage thousands of different dealerships, some with big budgets, some with small budgets, all good. It's too bad it's not a beer.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like. So we're trying to automate everything, right, across exactly what Taren said, from start to finish. We want to integrate AI agents and automation. What keeps me awake at night is I don't want to bloat the tech stack. So I'm already managing 2 tech stacks. I don't want to make any of those any bigger. And so we've done some really cool things within each of the tech stacks, and I'm going to talk about how we're going to bring that together with Agentic as well. So some of the challenges that we're facing with the Dealer.com is making sure that things are delivering correctly. That was really, honestly, one of our biggest pain points when thinking about the solution and the automation that we're using from Fluency. So making sure that campaigns are going live on time and making sure that we are spending the dealers' budgets, because it's hard to get those budgets in the first place.
Yeah.
They really don't want to spend it on advertising. They would rather spend it on something else. So I'm going to quickly pivot into my larger goals for the organization. And here's where I'm going to talk about Agentic. And exactly as Taren mentioned, it is important that you have already chosen the most painful processes and tried to automate those before even layering something else on top of that. Because if you don't know what those pain points are and you try to build something and you're like, the agent will do it, it's not going to magically do something and fix it if you don't know exactly what those pain points are throughout the process. And so what you're looking at here really is my strategy on a page, and it's not very exciting, I know, and it looks pretty boring. But what we are going to do, if you can think about me having the 2 tech stacks, what I am calling Agentic AI is this great connector. Because we have already tried to consolidate as much as we can. Publishers need very different, publishers and brands need very different tech than agencies do. And so when I think about Agentic AI and all of the partners that we are with today, Fluency being one of them, you've got to have nimble tech partners who will help you create that enterprise level agentic solution so that I'm able to use all of my people, right? All of the media planners, all of the ad strategists, all of the ad traffickers, right? Who are doing traditional trafficking within GAM, use them across publisher, and agency. You can upskill people. You can teach folks, new things that they've never been able to do before. And agentic AI is the thing that is going to make this possible. And I'm going to use the media planning scenario too, because it's sort of the easiest for everyone to grasp. If you think about the media planners who sit on the Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book publisher side of the house, and you think about the media planners that sit within dealer.com and the agency side of the house, they're fully siloed today. They don't really talk to each other. They're not doing anything together, but they all have the radical skill set of being like an analytical media planner. They all know the spaces very well. But they're completely separate. When you implement agentic AI and everything is plugged into that, it's like connected to the brain. We'll be able to use all of those media planners across agency and publisher. We can say, I don't know what you want to call it. Ours is going to be Mia. So, hi Mia. Can you please help me build a media plan, including all of my best performing placements across Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book? But can you also include, pipe in some of our DSP inventory, that's display, and our meta campaigns, and Pinterest and everything that we have piped through Fluency? Can you please, give me all of that back? And it will return a media plan in 3 to 5 minutes. That is like 80% formed. And then the teams, right? You definitely need the humans in the loop. The teams can then put their 20% special sauce on top.
If I step outside of the advertising domain for just a second, think about the software world. That's been the big evolution and revolution that we have. Where it used to be APIs, it's now MCP servers and agentic-friendly function calling. So
exactly.
Oh, I want you to get to this. This
is the goods. So I want to bring it back to a tactical and tangible solution that you can take back with you. One of the critical components in the ad strategy world, you have 40 different ad strats. They're all delivering performance decks at the end of the month in their own voice, in their own way. They're sending them out at different times, right? We worked with Fluency to build that new reporting agent. It's pulling all of that campaign information into this very nice and friendly, lovely chat agent who then reads the dealer all of their performance. So this is an automated delivery. It's a deck that goes out to each dealer every month. It's got the same tone, the same voice. It gives all of the same recommendations. And so this created radical consistency for us across our 40 ad strat team.
Consistent strategy, not always the same. It's not the same. It's custom to every account.
Oh no, I'm saying it created consistency across like what the decks look like.
Yeah,
so it was Wild West before.
Probably my favorite of all of the things that we've achieved so far. Think of this with a voiceover, animated, a great storyteller.
Really good.
You can have an avatar speak to you, or you can just have it talk to you with just a voiceover. But bringing you through that process, because when we first wanted to do automated reporting, the concern was, we're going to lose that conversation. We're going to lose that ability to actually lead them through and give recommendations and help them understand their data like a person would.
Yes.
So thank you, Ann.
We're getting yelled at.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
So we obviously could keep talking about this for another hour. We are going to stop here, and we're going to invite all of you to come back across from the escalator to the left. We have our AdOps lounge over there at Fluency. We're going to have our panel taking questions live. We've got refreshments. So if you have questions, hold them. Meet us over there, and we'll continue this conversation. But thank you,
Thank you,
Eric and Taren. It was great.